The arena was full of alien voices, sharp and loud like thunder in the air. Thousands of glowing eyes stared at the center ground where one human stood alone. Dust rose from the cracked stone floor, and banners of the alien kingdom hung heavy in the hot wind. The alien warriors stood in circles, their spears hitting the ground in rhythm, shaking the earth as if they were already celebrating victory. They had gathered not to see a fair fight, but to watch a man humiliated. The human stood still, holding a small blade in his hand. Compared to the giant weapons of the aliens, it looked like nothing more than a child's toy. The weapon was narrow, plain, and unimpressive, with no glowing marks, no heavy design, no sign of power. It looked weak in every way. That was why the laughter began. The alien champion, a tall warrior woman with armor that reflected the sun, walked forward and pointed at him. Her weapon was huge, a long steel-edged halberd humming with energy that crackled across its blade. The size of it alone made the human's weapon look even more pathetic. She laughed loudly, and her voice echoed through the arena. "Is that what you bring into our sacred duel?" she mocked, raising her voice so the whole crowd could hear. "A toothpick? A broken piece of metal? Do you plan to scratch me with it?" Her people burst into laughter, their cruel voices joining hers until the air shook with their mockery. She stepped closer, lowering her halberd and tapping the ground, sparks flying each time the edge kissed the stone. "I almost feel insulted," she said, smiling with sharp teeth. "Do humans have no shame? Or are you too weak to even carry a proper weapon?" The crowd chanted her name, clapping their hands against their armored chests. They believed this would be over quickly. The human would be crushed, his body broken, his blood staining the sand. They wanted to see fear in his eyes, but there was none. The human's face stayed calm, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on his opponent. He did not answer her taunts. His silence made her laugh louder, because to her silence meant weakness. The queen sat above in her high throne, her golden crown glowing under the sun. Even she smiled faintly at the scene. She had seen humans before, small and fragile, their weapons nothing compared to the steel of her warriors. This one would be no different. The queen leaned on her armrest, ready to watch a brief fight. She did not expect entertainment. She expected quick humiliation. The alien champion circled him, her long tail dragging across the ground, her armor plates clinking with each step. "Look at him," she shouted to the crowd. "Tiny blade in hand, tiny courage in heart. Should I kill him quickly, or should I play with him first?" The crowd roared back, "Play! Play! Play!" They wanted to see the human suffer before the end. The human lifted the small blade slightly, letting the dull sunlight catch its edge. His hand was steady, his posture straight. His eyes did not waver, and his lips pressed into a thin line as if carved from stone. He looked like a man who had seen worse than this arena, worse than this crowd, worse than death itself. Some of the younger aliens stopped laughing for a brief second, uneasy at the way he stood so calm. But the champion did not notice. She only saw weakness where there was silence. She lifted her weapon high and pointed it at his chest. "I will end this in one strike," she promised, and the crowd howled with approval. "Your little toy cannot save you. Your human pride cannot protect you. Today, you bleed." But the human finally spoke. His voice was low but steady, carrying across the arena because of the silence that followed her words. "You speak too much," he said simply. His words were calm, not proud, not angry, just steady, as if he was stating a fact. The alien warrior blinked, surprised, then threw her head back and laughed even louder. The crowd laughed with her again, though some of them now glanced nervously at the human. There was something strange about the way he had said it. Not loud, not emotional, just truth spoken plain. The champion grinned and twirled her halberd with a heavy swing that made the ground shake. "Then let us see how long your silence lasts when I break your bones," she shouted. The announcer's horn blew, sharp and loud, marking the beginning of the duel. Dust blew across the floor as the alien warrior stomped forward, each step heavy, each step filled with power. The human did not move, his blade still low in his hand. He looked almost fragile compared to her size and strength, but his eyes never shifted. He waited. He measured her. The alien people leaned forward from the stands, ready to cheer the moment she struck. They believed it was already over. None of them imagined that this duel would become a story remembered for generations, that this moment of laughter would soon turn into silence, and that the human they mocked for weakness would soon reveal a truth that would shatter their pride forever. The horn's echo still rang in the air when the alien warrior charged forward. Her halberd swung down like a falling tower, its sharp edge glowing with crackling blue energy. The ground trembled as the weapon hit, sending sparks and dust into the air. The crowd shouted in excitement, already expecting to see the human crushed in the first strike. But when the dust cleared, he was still standing. His tiny blade had caught the massive weapon. The sound of metal striking metal rang sharp, and the crowd gasped. The human's feet slid back, carving lines into the stone floor, but he did not fall. His arms trembled for only a moment before they steadied. His eyes never left hers. The alien warrior frowned. It should have been impossible. The strength behind her blow was enough to break a normal fighter in half. Yet this human, with his small toy blade, had stopped it. With a growl, she pulled her weapon back and struck again, harder, faster. The halberd came from the side this time, aiming to sweep him off the ground. The human bent low, blade flashing, and the two weapons clashed again with a shower of sparks. The sound was louder than before, echoing around the arena like thunder. The alien crowd shouted louder too, both in anger and surprise. They wanted to see him fall, but he was still standing. The human moved quickly, his body twisting and dodging between her heavy swings. Each time her weapon came down, his small blade met it, guiding it away at the last moment. The alien champion began to snarl, her teeth showing. She had fought countless duels, defeated warriors twice her size, yet this one man was resisting her like no one ever had. His blade was too small to match her power, yet somehow it always met her weapon at the exact point needed to stop her strike. Dust rose around them as the duel continued. Her weapon slammed into the ground, cracking stone, cutting through air, striking with the sound of storms. His tiny blade flashed like lightning, leaving streaks of light each time it blocked. Slowly, thin glowing marks began to appear on her armor. The crowd noticed it first with shock. The human's weapon, though small, was sharp enough to cut through alien metal. Every time he dodged, he left a mark. Not deep wounds, but scratches that grew more and more. The warrior hissed in anger, swinging with even greater speed. Her halberd moved in great arcs, fast enough to blur. The human ducked under one strike, then turned sideways against another, sparks flying across his chest plate. He winced but did not falter. The next strike came from above again, a killing blow, but he lifted his blade at the last moment, and the halberd slid off, slamming into the ground beside him. The impact cracked the stone floor so deep that dust rose like smoke. The alien champion's tail lashed the ground in fury. She could not understand it. This human should have been dead by now. He should have been begging for mercy. Instead, he was still calm, still steady, still unbroken. "You mock me by surviving," she spat, sweat dripping down her forehead. "I will crush you until no one remembers your name." The human gave no answer. He only shifted his stance, the tiny blade held low and ready. His breathing was slow, steady, like a hunter waiting for the right moment. The crowd began to grow restless. Some shouted for the champion to kill him quickly, others yelled in disbelief. No human had lasted this long in the arena, not against her. The alien warrior lunged again, this time aiming directly at his heart. Her halberd moved with the force of a storm. The human sidestepped, his blade flashing, and the sound of tearing metal followed. A shallow cut appeared across her armor near the shoulder. The crowd gasped loudly, and she froze in shock. It was not possible. No one had ever touched her armor before. But this man, this human with his small blade, had cut it. Her anger exploded. She roared, spinning the halberd in a circle and sending a wave of energy outward. The ground split open, and the human jumped back just in time, landing lightly on his feet. Dust covered his face, but his eyes shone through, clear and sharp. He looked at her with the same calm stare, unshaken. The alien champion's pride burned hotter than the sun. Each strike she had thrown was faster, harder, deadlier than the last, but the human refused to fall. Her arms ached, her breath grew heavier, and still he stood against her. His blade was glowing faintly now, thin lines of energy running along its edge. Every strike he made left a faint spark on her weapon or her armor. She began to realize that his weapon was not ordinary. It carried something hidden, something dangerous. The crowd fell into uneasy silence as the duel went on. The laughter that had filled the arena before was gone. Now there were whispers, doubts, nervous glances between alien faces. What was this human? How could he stand against their champion with such a small weapon? The champion raised her halberd high once more, her muscles straining, fury burning in her eyes. She would crush him with the next blow, even if it destroyed the arena itself. The human, still calm, lifted his blade and waited. His silence made her rage even more. She screamed and charged forward, her weapon swinging down like a mountain falling. The impact shook the arena, dust and sparks blinding everyone for a moment. When the haze cleared, the human was still there, his small blade locked against her massive weapon. His feet slid back, but his body held firm. He looked up at her, sweat dripping down his cheek, and for the first time, her eyes wavered. She realized this was no ordinary fight. This human was not weak. This duel was not simple, and somewhere deep inside her chest, a seed of doubt began to grow, a fear she had never felt before. The alien warrior's anger boiled as her strikes grew heavier, faster, and more reckless. Each swing of her massive halberd ripped the air apart, leaving trails of energy glowing in its path. The ground cracked under the force of her weapon, sending shards of stone flying across the arena. Dust swirled around her like a storm, but through it all, the human still stood, his small blade flashing again and again, blocking, guiding, and slipping through the gaps of her power. The crowd roared with every strike, their voices rising higher as the duel became more violent. They expected the human to break, to collapse under the weight of her blows, but instead, he kept pushing forward. His movements were not wild or desperate. They were precise, careful, and strangely calm. Every time the alien warrior believed she had him cornered, he slipped aside, his blade leaving another small mark on her armor. Her breathing grew harsh. Sweat ran down her forehead and soaked into her armor. Each swing of her halberd drained more strength from her body, and the human's resistance felt like mockery. She had fought beasts larger than houses, enemies with blades that glowed brighter than suns, but none of them had made her feel this growing frustration. She screamed and lunged forward, her halberd stabbing straight at his chest. The human lifted his blade to block, but this time the force was too much. The clash sent a shockwave through the arena, throwing dust into the air and rattling the stones. His small weapon cracked under the impact. A thin line spread across the blade, glowing with faint light. The alien warrior's eyes widened with triumph. At last, the human's toy had broken. His only defense was crumbling. She laughed, the sound wild and cruel. "Now it ends," she shouted, pulling her weapon back for another strike. The crowd erupted in cheers, their fear replaced by excitement again. They believed the fight was finally over, the human seconds away from defeat. She raised her halberd high, her muscles bulging with effort, ready to smash him into the ground. But then she froze. The human was smiling. It was not the smile of a broken man, not the smile of someone about to die. It was calm, almost cold, and it sent a chill crawling down her spine. His cracked blade hung loosely in his hand, glowing faintly, but his eyes never left hers. He looked at her not as a defeated warrior, but as someone waiting for a moment he had always known would come. Her laughter faltered, confusion flashing in her mind. Why would he smile now? Why would a man on the edge of death look so certain? She brought her halberd down anyway, determined to crush him before her doubt could grow stronger. The weapon roared as it cut through the air, aiming straight for his chest. The human stepped forward instead of back, his broken blade rising one last time. The two weapons met with a deafening sound, and his small blade shattered completely, fragments spinning through the air like shards of light. The crowd screamed in victory, their voices shaking the arena. The human was unarmed. The alien champion threw her head back, laughing loudly, her chest rising and falling with pride. She turned slightly, showing off her triumph to the crowd. "The toy is broken," she roared. "The fight is mine." But the human did not fall. He stood in the middle of the arena, fragments of his blade still glowing faintly on the ground, and for the first time he shifted his stance. His hand reached slowly behind his back. The laughter in the arena grew louder as the aliens mocked him again, thinking he was reaching for nothing, that his game was finished. Then the air changed. A faint hum filled the arena, low at first, then growing stronger. The sound was unlike anything the aliens had heard before. The human's hand closed around something hidden, something that had been resting unseen until now. With one smooth motion, he pulled it free. The crowd fell silent. From behind his back, the human drew a massive weapon, far larger than the broken blade they had mocked. It glowed with deep energy, humming with raw power, its surface etched with strange human symbols. It was not plain, not fragile, not weak. It was alive with strength, burning with a light that made the air itself tremble. The human lifted it with one arm, the weight balanced as if it belonged to him alone. The alien warrior's eyes widened, her mouth falling open as her laughter died in her throat. Her halberd, which had moments ago felt like the strongest weapon in the arena, now seemed small, powerless. A child's stick compared to what the human held. She stumbled a step back without meaning to, her chest tightening with a feeling she had never known before: fear. The crowd, once roaring with laughter, now sat in complete silence. No one spoke, no one breathed. All eyes stared at the human, at the massive glowing weapon that had appeared as if from nowhere. The queen herself leaned forward on her throne, her golden crown tilting, her lips pressed into a thin line. She too was shocked, though she tried not to show it. The human pointed the weapon toward the alien warrior, its glow casting a long shadow across the arena floor. Sparks of energy snapped at the edges, burning into the stone. He did not speak, but he did not need to. His silence was heavier than words. The message was clear. This was the real fight, and everything before had been nothing more than a test. The alien warrior's grip tightened on her halberd, her pride warring with her fear. She refused to back down in front of her people, but her hands trembled. She had mocked him for his tiny weapon, laughed at his weakness, but now she stood facing something far greater, and she knew that the battle had only just begun. The glow of the human's new weapon spread across the arena like firelight spilling into darkness. Its blade was longer than the alien champion's halberd and wider than her chest. Lines of energy crawled along its surface, humming with a deep, steady rhythm like a heartbeat. Every spark that cracked from its edge left burns on the stone floor. The silence in the crowd grew heavier, as if every throat had been locked shut by shock. A moment ago, they had been cheering for her victory. Now they sat frozen, staring at the human and the massive weapon in his hand. The alien warrior took an unsteady breath, her chest rising and falling as she struggled to keep her composure. She tried to force a laugh, but her voice broke halfway, and it came out thin. Her tail twitched nervously behind her, and her eyes darted from the weapon to the human's steady gaze. She wanted to believe it was a trick, some kind of illusion, but the weight of its presence pressed down on her like a mountain. Even from where she stood, she could feel its power. "You hid that?" she said at last, her voice cracking, though she tried to sound strong. "All this time you mocked me with that little toy, just so you could reveal this?" She tightened her grip on her halberd, but for the first time in her life, her weapon felt light, almost useless. The human still said nothing. His silence cut deeper than words, because silence meant confidence. He didn't need to explain. He didn't need to boast. He just held the massive blade in one hand, pointing it toward her, as if daring her to take another step. His eyes were steady, calm, the same as before. The alien crowd began to stir again, but it wasn't laughter this time. It was whispers, nervous, confused, frightened whispers. Some of them leaned forward as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Others pulled back as if the human's weapon could reach out and cut them too. The queen above shifted in her seat, her golden crown catching the sun, her expression no longer calm. For the first time, the queen looked unsettled. The alien warrior's pride screamed inside her. She could not back away. She could not show fear before her people. To do so would be worse than death. With a sharp hiss, she raised her halberd and pointed it forward again, trying to regain her confidence. "Your trick won't save you," she spat. "Power means nothing without skill. I will crush you all the same." Her words rang out, but her hands trembled as she swung her weapon. She lunged forward, halberd striking in a wide arc toward his chest. The air whistled with its speed, but when her weapon met his, the clash was like thunder. A wave of force rippled out, knocking dust and small stones into the air. Her halberd shook in her hands, and pain shot through her arms from the impact. The human didn't move back. He didn't even stumble. He stood firm, his massive blade locked against hers, and then, with a slight push, he sent her weapon sliding to the side. Sparks showered down, and the sound of tearing metal rang as a new crack appeared along her halberd's edge. She gasped, her eyes wide. Her weapon had never broken before. Not against beasts, not against champions, not against any foe. Yet this man had chipped it with a single push. The crowd gasped with her. Their whispers grew louder, spreading like fire. The alien warrior roared in defiance and attacked again, spinning her weapon with furious speed. The halberd came from above, from the side, from below. Each strike was met by the human's massive blade, and each time the sound of their clash rang louder. Each time her weapon cracked a little more. The energy on his blade grew brighter with every strike, until the entire arena was glowing in its light. She tried to strike his chest, but he caught her blow and twisted his weapon, forcing her to stumble forward. He stepped past her guard with speed that should have been impossible for someone holding a weapon that size. His blade swung upward, stopping just short of her neck. She froze, her breath caught in her throat, feeling the heat of its energy so close to her skin. He could have ended it in that moment, but he pulled back instead. He was showing her mercy, showing her control. The humiliation burned her pride worse than any wound. She growled, spinning around, and charged again with every ounce of strength left in her body. Her halberd came down in one last desperate strike, a blow meant to kill. The human lifted his weapon high, and when they met, the sound was deafening. Her halberd shattered. Pieces of the broken weapon clattered across the arena floor, glowing fragments scattering like falling stars. She staggered back, clutching the useless shaft in her hands, her eyes wide with disbelief. The weapon that had carried her through every battle, that had made her name feared across the galaxy, was gone, broken like glass under the human's strength. The arena fell into silence again, the weight of the moment crushing every voice. All eyes were on her, the once proud champion now standing weaponless before the human she had mocked. She breathed heavily, her chest heaving, her pride bleeding out of her as quickly as her strength. The human lifted his massive blade once more and pointed it at her, not with cruelty, but with certainty. His silence spoke louder than any insult. He had shown her and her people that the fight had never been hers to win. From the beginning, he had been in control. And now the truth stood clear in front of everyone. The mocked human was the true warrior in the arena. The alien champion's knees trembled. For the first time in her life, she felt small. The broken pieces of the alien's halberd still smoked on the arena floor, glowing faintly as they cooled. The sound of their fall had faded, but the silence that followed was heavier than the loudest roar. Thousands of alien eyes stared in shock, unable to believe what had just happened. Their champion, the pride of their people, stood empty-handed, breathing hard, her chest rising and falling as if she had run through fire. Across from her, the human stood tall, his massive glowing blade steady in his grip, not shaking, not weakening. The sight alone was enough to make the crowd shiver. The alien warrior tried to speak, but no words came out. Her mouth opened, her throat worked, but only the sound of her harsh breathing filled the air. Her pride had been struck harder than her body. She had mocked this man, laughed at his tiny weapon, and now she had nothing left while he held a blade that seemed to split the very air around it. Her tail lashed the ground in frustration, her nails digging into her palms. She wanted to fight more, but there was nothing in her hands, nothing she could do. The human took one step forward, and the sound of his boots on stone echoed through the silence like a drumbeat. His weapon glowed brighter, humming low, as if it were alive and hungry for battle. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. Every step he took sent waves of tension through the arena, pressing down on everyone watching. His face was calm, his eyes sharp, showing no anger, no mercy, only certainty. The alien warrior growled and lunged forward barehanded, refusing to accept defeat. She moved fast, her claws extended, aiming for his throat. But the human's massive blade swung once, a single controlled strike, and the energy of it crashed into the ground in front of her, cutting a deep line through the stone. The shockwave knocked her back, throwing dust and sparks into the air. She landed hard on her knees, the skin on her arms burning from the heat of his strike. The crowd gasped as one, many of them jumping to their feet. They had never seen power like this before. Not from her, not from anyone. Their champion had been untouchable for years, yet she was on the ground, trembling, with no weapon to hold. Their whispers grew louder, spreading through the stands like fire in dry grass. Some spoke in fear, some in disbelief, some even in awe of the human. The alien warrior pushed herself up again, but her body shook with the effort. Her pride screamed at her to keep fighting, to stand tall, but her strength was slipping away with every breath. She looked at him, at the man she had called weak, and for the first time she saw not fragility, but something unshakable, something that her people had never understood about humans. He stopped in front of her, his massive weapon resting just above her shoulder. The glow of it burned against her skin, the heat forcing her to freeze. If he wanted, he could end it with a single move. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stared up at him, waiting for the strike. But it never came. Instead, the human lowered the blade slightly and stepped back. He spared her life. He offered her mercy, even after all her insults, all her mockery, all her attempts to kill him. The gesture cut deeper than any wound. The crowd fell silent again, confused, shocked. Mercy was not part of their duels. Mercy was weakness in their culture. But here stood the human, strong enough to destroy their champion, yet choosing not to. Her throat tightened as shame and confusion twisted inside her. She dropped her head, unable to meet his eyes. For the first time, she understood what humiliation truly meant. She had been so certain that strength was measured only by size and power, but now she saw something else: discipline, control, and the choice to show mercy when no one expected it. The crowd began to murmur louder, torn between outrage and respect. Some hissed that he should have killed her. Others whispered that only true strength allowed such restraint. The queen above gripped the armrest of her throne, her sharp nails digging into the gold. Her expression was dark, her pride wounded along with her champion's. Yet she too could not deny the truth. The human had won, not just the duel, but the hearts of those who had seen it. The alien warrior sank back to her knees, her hands pressing against the ground. She could no longer fight. She no longer had the will to. Her body shook with exhaustion, her pride broken into pieces as sharp as her shattered weapon. She whispered something only those closest could hear. "I cannot stand against him." The human turned away slightly, lowering his weapon fully. He did not lift his arms in victory. He did not boast to the crowd. He simply stood in silence, letting the truth of the battle speak for itself. That silence filled the arena more than any shout could. It told everyone watching that he had no need to prove himself further. The alien warrior lifted her head slowly, her eyes still filled with shame, but now touched with something else: respect. For the first time, she did not see him as weak. She saw him as stronger than anyone she had faced before. And deep inside her, a strange thought whispered, one she would never have believed only moments ago. She was glad to have lost to him and no one else. The crowd, still stunned, erupted at last, their voices clashing between anger and awe. Some demanded blood, others cheered for the human. The entire arena shook with the chaos of voices. Yet through it all, the human remained still, calm, his glowing weapon at his side. The fight was finished, but its meaning had only begun to grow. The alien warrior stayed on her knees, her armor cracked and her weapon shattered into pieces around her. Dust clung to her skin, sweat dripped from her brow, and the pride that once burned in her chest now lay in ruins. She had mocked him, she had laughed at him, but now she faced the truth of her humiliation. Around her, thousands of voices rose and fell like waves, the alien crowd torn between rage, disbelief, and silent awe. Their champion had been brought low, and by a human, the very creature they had always called weak. The human stood before her, his massive glowing blade still humming with power. Its light cut through the dust-filled air, casting a shadow that fell over her like a cloak. He could have killed her, could have ended her story in that moment, but he had chosen not to. That mercy burned deeper than any wound. She could feel the eyes of her people piercing her back, judging her, waiting for her next move. Every second of her kneeling was another cut to her honor. The queen sat above them, her golden crown tilted forward as she leaned in her throne. Her expression was tight, her lips pressed together, her nails scratching against the armrest. She was furious, but forced to remain silent. Her champion had lost, and no words could change the truth the entire arena had seen. The queen's rage only made the silence heavier, pressing down on every alien heart in the stands. The alien warrior clenched her fists against the ground. She wanted to scream, to rise, to prove she was still worthy, but her body would not move the way her pride demanded. Her arms shook, her legs felt weak, and deep inside, she knew the fight was over. Her strength was gone. The only thing left was her shame. The human lowered his weapon fully and stepped back. His silence spoke louder than any words could. He didn't claim victory with shouts, didn't raise his weapon to the sky. He simply stood still, breathing steadily, his expression calm. He had no need to boast because the truth was already written in the broken pieces of her weapon scattered across the floor. The crowd erupted again, some voices shouting in anger, demanding the human finish her. "Kill her!" they cried, their fists slamming against the stone barriers. Others whispered to each other, voices trembling with unease. They had seen power, yes, but they had also seen something far more dangerous: control. The human strength wasn't wild, it wasn't reckless. It was precise, calm, and unshakable. That frightened them more than the size of his blade. The alien warrior lifted her head slowly. Her eyes met the human's, and for a moment the chaos around them faded into silence. His gaze wasn't mocking, wasn't cruel. He looked at her as if she were not his enemy anymore, but something else, an opponent who had fought with all her pride and lost. Her chest tightened at that look. She had never seen mercy in a duel before. Among her people, mercy did not exist. To lose was to die. But this man had broken that rule, and that broke her pride in a different way. Her lips parted, and her voice came out low, broken. "Why spare me?" she whispered, almost too soft for the crowd to hear. Her words shook with confusion, because she could not understand. To her, sparing a defeated enemy was weakness. Yet this man had shown mercy, and somehow it made him stronger than ever. The human did not answer. He only held her gaze for a long moment before turning his eyes toward the queen above. That silent gesture was enough. The duel was over, and the whole arena knew it. The queen's face darkened, fury burning in her golden eyes. She slammed her hand against the armrest, her voice finally breaking through the noise of the crowd. "Enough!" she roared, her voice carrying across the arena. The air shook with her command, and the crowd fell silent at once. "Our champion has fallen. Our honor is stained, and this human," she spat the word as if it poisoned her mouth, "has proven his strength." The alien warrior felt her stomach twist at those words. It was one thing for her people to whisper, but for the queen herself to admit defeat was unthinkable. Shame burned her cheeks, and she lowered her head again. She had failed her queen, her people, and herself. The queen's voice sharpened as she pointed down toward the arena floor. "But mercy has no place in our law. Mercy is weakness. He spares her life, and that insult must be answered." Her voice dripped with anger, but there was something else hidden beneath it: fear. Fear that this human's strength and control would infect the hearts of her people. The crowd grew restless, their whispers returning, their loyalty pulled in two directions. Some shouted agreement with their queen, demanding punishment for the human's defiance of tradition. Others remained silent, their eyes still fixed on the man who had done the impossible. The alien warrior trembled, her mind spinning. She knew what was coming. Her queen would not let this end with simple defeat. The human had humiliated her champion, humiliated the crown. There had to be a punishment, a consequence. But what form it would take, no one yet knew. The human, calm as ever, stood tall, his weapon resting lightly against the ground. His face revealed nothing, but inside, he was ready. Ready for whatever came next. His silence once again unsettled everyone around him. He was not afraid, and that lack of fear was more terrifying to the aliens than any roar or shout could ever be. The alien warrior bowed her head lower, her hands pressing into the cracked stone floor. Her humiliation was complete. Before her people, before her queen, and most of all before the man she had once mocked, she had been broken. And yet, deep inside her chest, something strange stirred. A feeling she could not name. It was not hate, it was not shame. It was something that made her chest ache in a way no wound ever had. The queen's next words would decide everything. The arena was still heavy with silence when the queen finally rose from her throne. Her tall figure glowed under the sun, the golden crown reflecting a light that made her look almost divine. Her eyes, however, burned with fury. She had just witnessed something that had never happened in her reign, her strongest warrior defeated, and by a human. Her voice thundered across the arena, shaking the silence apart. "By our law," she said, each word sharp as a blade, "a warrior who loses in the sacred duel suffers punishment. But when a champion loses before the eyes of the crown, the punishment becomes greater. Marriage is the binding of humiliation. The one who defeats must claim the one who falls." The crowd erupted with noise, half in shock, half in excitement. Some aliens shouted in outrage, calling it unworthy for their proud warrior to be tied to a human. Others laughed at the irony of it, finding satisfaction in the law turning against her. And some stared silently, still shaken by the strength they had witnessed. The alien warrior's face went pale. Her heart hammered in her chest, her pride already shattered, and now her queen had sealed her fate. Marriage to a human, to the very man she had mocked in front of everyone. She wanted to protest, to scream, but the law of her people was ancient and unbreakable. Her lips trembled, her hands clenched into fists, but no words escaped her. The weight of her queen's command pressed down harder than any weapon ever had. The human stood still, his massive blade glowing faintly at his side. His expression remained calm, but his eyes flickered for a moment, as if weighing the meaning of what had just been declared. He hadn't come here seeking marriage. He hadn't asked for her hand. But the law of the aliens had wrapped him into their tradition. Around him, thousands of alien eyes burned into his skin, waiting for him to react, waiting for him to claim or to deny. The alien warrior raised her head, her throat dry. She wanted to hate him, to curse him for what he had taken from her. Yet when her eyes met his, something unexpected happened. His gaze was not cruel. It was not filled with mockery or pride. It was steady, calm, the same gaze he had carried through the entire battle. It was the gaze of someone who respected strength, even in defeat. The fire of her anger dimmed, replaced by confusion. The queen's voice rang out again. "You have humiliated my warrior," she said, pointing a clawed finger at the human. "By our sacred rules, she is yours now. Her honor, her life, her body, all belong to you." Her words cracked through the air, and the crowd grew louder, their cheers and protests mixing into chaos. The alien warrior's chest tightened. Her people watched her as if she were no longer their champion, but a prize, stripped of choice. Her humiliation deepened, and yet there was no escape. If she resisted, she would dishonor her people further. If she obeyed, she would bind herself to the man she once despised. Her whole body shook as she lowered her head, accepting the fate forced upon her. The human stepped forward slowly, his boots crunching against the broken stone floor. He stopped before her, towering not by size, but by the weight of his victory. He lowered his blade, then slid it back behind him, letting the glow fade away. The arena dimmed slightly as the weapon's hum vanished into silence. He reached out his hand toward her, not in dominance, but in offering. The alien warrior stared at his hand, trembling. It was rough, scarred, strong. The same hand that had broken her pride. The same hand that could have killed her but chose not to. Slowly, almost against her will, she placed her own clawed hand into his. The touch was light at first, shaking, but steady warmth spread through her skin. The crowd exploded with noise, their voices splitting into two storms. Some howled with rage, calling it an insult to their people. Others cheered wildly, celebrating the first time a human had ever bent their traditions to his will. The queen's eyes narrowed, her fury hidden behind a mask of control. She had expected humiliation to crush her warrior, but she had not expected the human to accept without cruelty, without pride. That mercy threatened her power more than the victory itself. The alien warrior lifted her head again, looking at the man now bound to her by law. She searched his eyes for arrogance, for scorn, for the triumphant smirk she expected, but it wasn't there. Instead, she found calm strength, the same strength that had carried him through the duel. Her throat tightened as a strange feeling stirred in her chest, one that confused and frightened her more than defeat ever could. The announcer's voice broke through the noise, declaring the duel's end and the law's fulfillment. By the will of the queen, and by the sacred rule of our people, the champion is now bound to the victor. The human claims her as his own. The alien warrior felt every word like a weight pressing her deeper into the ground. And yet, when she looked at him again, holding her hand firmly, a part of her no longer resisted. A part of her, hidden deep inside, wondered what life with this strange, silent human might mean. The arena shook with voices, but in that moment, for the two of them, there was only silence. He stood with her, not as a conqueror, but as something different. And though her pride still bled and her shame still burned, she could not deny the truth. Her fate had changed forever.